no people in the future. There are no people. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey everybody, it is Friday, March 12th, 2021. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out the Coop podcast. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. Each week I talk to unemployed Trump staffer Sean Kitchen about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. We are streaming live, yes everybody, also on our YouTube channel. Want to make sure you head on over there, smash that subscribe button. Hit that bell so you know every time we go live, and make sure you like this stream. On today's show, just so you know, we had a little technical difficulties. That's why you got a little bit of a different intro. There's something that's weird with the other intro music that is throwing the levels off. So I apologize for the little hiccupy delay for today's program. Anyways, on today's show, I am in uncharacteristically, weirdly happy and good mood this week, and it feels very uncomfortable. So here we go. This week, it was a huge week. The American Recovery Act is now law. President Biden signed the bill into law a day ahead of schedule, and some people will start receiving deposits in their bank accounts as early as this weekend. The American Recovery Act is a real game changer. No, it is not perfect. But as Sam Cedars been saying in the Majority Report, the difference here is that what's not perfect about it is what's left out of the bill, not really what's in the bill. That's very different from the past ones. Anyways, potential real game changer. It's raising the prospect in some circles and some commentary that maybe this is that first signal that the Reagan era is finally coming to an end. I'm not quite going there yet, but this is kind of an interesting kind of moment. The House of Representatives this week also passed the PRO Act. That's one of the most significant pieces of pro-labor legislation in decades. AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka called the legislation a game changer. Again, right, game changer. The PRO Act would effectively undercut the so-called right to work for less laws in more than 24 states, prevent employers from forcing workers to attend anti-union captive audience meetings, allow newly certified unions to seek arbitration and mediation for first contracts, prevent employers from using an employee's immigration status against them when determining the terms of their employment, and establish financial penalties for companies, executives, corporate directors, and other company officials who violate workers' rights. No, not just kind of like little penalties for the corporation. Actual people will now have to kind of deal with their own actions. I'm just freaking blown away. Maybe Rick Smith is finally going to get his perp walks for kind of corporate executives. The bill faces a tough fight in the Senate, which may just push Democrats to finally end the filibuster. I want to talk a little about the filibuster today because there's a bunch of legislation that's now going to the Senate that is going to kind of jam up that question around the filibuster, which we'll get to. Because the House also passed this week, just like yesterday, I think, gun legislation that would strengthen background checks right across the board for any new purchases of guns. I mean, this is remarkable. And that even got some Republicans aboard, right? Crazy. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's Republican-dominated state house passed a bill to give immunity to drivers who run over protesters. If signed into law, the legislation would shield from liability any driver who, quote, unintentionally injures or kills a protester while fleeing a riot as long as they had reason to believe that they were in danger. Yep, it would effectively be qualified immunity to run down protesters and for everybody. The bill also calls for $5,000 in fines and jail time for protesters who unlawfully obstruct traffic. John Carroll University in Cleveland now says that it can fire individual tenured faculty members without cause in cases of quote-unquote budgetary hardship, and they've expanded what that means. Several faculty members have already been fired, and programs are slated to be eliminated at the stroke of a pen. Look out, higher ed. Speaking of getting kicked out, Biden's dogs got kicked from the White House this week. Not that's on the same level, but it's true. And what's up with little Marco this week? I mean, little Marco Rubio comes out supporting Amazon workers' union organizing drive? What is going on in the Republican Party? A majority of New York's Democratic delegations in the United States House has now called on Governor Cuomo to resign in the wake of his growing scandal. This includes Jerry Nadler, Mondaire Jones, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jamal Bowman, and Carolyn Mahoney, and more. And not to mention, there's impeachment moves that are now going on in the New York State legislature. Incredible. Today, a little bit closer to home, Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center has a complete rundown on what Pennsylvanians can expect from the American Rescue Package. The 5.9 million Pennsylvanians will receive $14.8 billion in direct payments. Hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvanians will see their health care premiums decrease, and a quarter of Pennsylvania's uninsured are now eligible for free bronze or low-cost silver packages of health care. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania will be receiving $7.2 billion from the American Rescue Package, which will help plug the state's $2.5 billion budget deficit, and county and municipal governments from across the state will receive an extra $5 billion. Bucks County Republican Party uses Johnson & Johnson as their caller ID to trick residents who are hoping to get the vaccine, only to hear a Republican Party message about attending a petition signing event before next week's signature deadline, right? Actually, residents got pretty pissed off about this, especially some older folks who were like waiting to get the vaccine, thinking it's Johnson & Johnson, and only to find out like, yes, this is the Bucks County Republican Party. Pretty crazy. And the York-based convenience store company, Rudders, said that the $2 an hour hazard pay that they provided employees on top of the regular wage during the pandemic will now be permanent. That means that the starting wage will now be $12.50 an hour, increased to $13 an hour after 3 months. And Poshy Chancellor Greenstein was at a Zoom town hall with faculty and staff at Kutztown University yesterday. When pressed on a series of problems at the university, including a lack of access to mental health services for students, racism in the campus police, and a whole range of other issues, Greenstein got frustrated a little bit and said that, look, the only solution is to unleash our creativity and do what they do in the tech industry, wildly experiment and fail fast. So I got a little meme for him on that one. That's good. In today's last call, NASA named the landing site of the Perseverance rover Octavia Butler Landing after the celebrated African-American science fiction writer. Butler's novels include Kindred, Parable of the Sower, and the Exogenesis, or now it's called the Lilith's Brood series. Her dystopian novels explore themes of racism, exploitation, global warming, and women's rights. And she just died in February, well, not just died, but February 24th, 2006. She's just an amazing writer. And the Navajo Nation is working with NASA's Perseverance rover team to name a few of its features identified on Mars. The president of the Navajo Nation, Jonathan Nez, said that quote, the partnership that the Nez Lizer administration has built with NASA will help revitalize our Navajo language. We hope that having our language used in the Perseverance mission will inspire more of our young Navajo people to understand the importance and significance of learning our language. Our words were used to help win World War II, and now we're helping to navigate and learn more about the planet Mars. And one of the members of the scientific team of the Perseverance rover is Navajo himself. His name is Aaron Yazi. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And China and Russia decided to sign an agreement to build a moon base. According to a Russian statement, the station, quote, is a complex of experimental and research facilities created on the surface and or in the orbit of the moon, designed to carry out multidisciplinary and multi-purpose research work. The move suggests that Russia is moving away from a long collaboration with the U.S. and may chart a new path once the International Space Station that program is scheduled to end at the end of the 2020s. Russia also notably did not sign on to the Artemis Accords, calling the rules too, quote, U.S.-centric. Are you ready for the Moonraker sequel? Yeah, here we go. And thanks to my friend Stu in Northern Ireland, I'll be watching some Galician noir this weekend. Yeah, Stu's wife is from Galicia. That's in the northwest corner of Spain. Kind of feels like your northwest corner of Ireland, actually, or the kind of like northwest, Pacific Northwest. It's an emerging kind of series thing. We talked about Nordic noir. You heard I've talked about that out on the show. Now we have this emergence of Galician noir, and I'm going to dive in head first. We'll also have some beer updates for you at Free Will, and see what else is going on for this really the first major week of spring. The weather's been awesome. I want to remind you to tune in to the Rick Smith Show on Free Speech TV this and every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can stream the show live at freespeech.org, and you can also tune in the Dish Network, DirecTV, or through the Free Speech TV app on Roku. And make sure to subscribe to the Rick Smith Show's daily podcast on iTunes, Podbeans, wherever you get your podcast. Got a big week coming up next week and Out to Coop Live. On Monday, I'll be talking to Peter Campbell. He's the president of ABSCUF chapter at Lockhaven. And Sean Odell. He's the president of the Lockhaven chapter of AFSCME. And the past president of ABSCUF at Lockhaven, Matt Geerton. We'll be talking about Poshy Chancellor Greenstein's plan to consolidate Lockhaven, Bloomsburg, and Mansfield universities. The move will result in the loss of dozens of faculty and staff jobs, cast an uncertain future on the region's economy, and leave thousands of students up in the air about the educational futures. And that will be Monday at 7 p.m. on the Podbean app or right here on our YouTube channel. And on Wednesday, this is going to be a little bit of a different format. We're not going to be broadcasting live for this. We're going to do it'll be a pre-recorded stuff, but it'll be released on Wednesday. I'm going to be talking to Christina Marusik, from Environmental Health News about her devastating 4-part story, Fractured, the Body Burden of Living Near Fracking. Fractured is an investigation of fracking chemicals in the air, water, and people of Western Pennsylvania. Environmental Health News' scientific investigation found Western Pennsylvania families near fracking are exposed to harmful chemicals, and regulations fail to protect communities' mental, physical, and social health. Christina Marusik tells the story of the science and interviews several families who have been exposed to years of fracking chemicals. And the interviews with the families seriously wrecked me. Which is why I kind of got in touch with her. The fact that the fracking companies refuse to take any responsibility and that the PA government officials still support the practice of fracking will enrage you. So that is coming up. Crazy. For all our gamers out there, I want to remind you to stop in the Game Inn, right? The Game Inn with 2 N's is located right on 309 in Quakertown. It's a Quakertown-based, black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show and my family of my son's best friend. The Game Inn has almost every gaming product you can imagine, retro N64s, Nintendo DSs, you name it. They got video games, they got action figures, they got Funko Pops, like literally walls of Funko Pops. Right? And kids get a discount with every A on the report card. You can check them out on their Facebook page at The Game Inn. Check them out on Twitter at The Game Inn with 2 N's. Got a question about a game, looking for something hard to get, message them on Facebook or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. Give them a call at 267-424-2535. Visit them on the web at The Game Inn, again with 2 N's, thegamein.com. And if you want a progressive future, we need progressive media. Support Pull No Punches homegrown progressive media today by becoming a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Go to patreon.com/rcpress. We got rid of Trump, and now the hard work of building a progressive future begins. We're here for the fight, and we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement the media. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month by going to patreon.com/rcpress. If you're not ready to become a patron, you can drop us a one-time donation by going to paypal.me/rcpress. Sean, welcome, man.
How's it going?
Well, we talked a little about this before the show, but I am in a good mood.
You're very Joe-pilled this morning.
I am. I've got joy. I got joy coming out my... I mean, no, seriously, but seriously, I have been floored about what's been happening this week. I mean, the fact that the passage of like the American Recovery Act, the passage of the PRO Act, at least in the House, and it's not just with the PRO Act, it's not just that it got passed, right? But you've got Joe Biden out there championing it, right? Actively supporting it, right? The fact that you've got now the House passing with Republican support this time, passing kind of gun control that would legislation that would basically require background checks for any gun purchase. I mean, it's. I feel like somebody's going to pinch me pretty soon. I'm waking up from a good dream because this is like significant stuff actually being done.
Yeah, and I'm glad we talked about like more important things this week. Such as Dr. Seuss and Potato Head. Well, look, they got injected into the discourse.
That's right. I'm serious, but what I don't know about you, and maybe this is just a function of kind of where I'm at and all this stuff, is that stuff did not resonate in the ways that it had in the past. And frankly, I think it's got a lot of these longtime Republican like hacks out there really starting to kind of get a little bit nervous.
So one of the things like we were talking about is like I can't believe that every single Republican voted no on this. I mean, you think about it right now, this bill is polling like 75% popularity. 50% of the party supports it, the Republican Party. like 2/3 of independents support it, or 70% of independents support it. So you're going to have a lot of conservative leaning people or Republicans, people who are former Republicans and aren't Republicans anymore because they're too embarrassed to call themselves Republicans. They really just dropped the ball on this. Like I cannot believe that they spent 2 weeks attacking the culture war stuff, which is what they use this bill for. Racist, transphobic attacks,
right?
With their amendment process, but that's like all they have left. They don't have people in their party willing to govern. It's just governing to them is owning the libs in the culture wars, and it's just like I don't see that as being a sustainable for them in the future.
No, look, I think it's the force.
I think you'll be able to rile people up with that stuff, but at what point does that saber rattling? Okay, you're talking about Potato Head doll versus Democrats putting money in my pocket, in my family's pockets.
Well, that's
or
exactly
saving my
the thing.
pension and stuff like that.
Well, this is where this is where material reality kind of exerts the force, right? And I think that's in better times, right? The Republicans can get a little bit more traction, but people are seriously hurting, right? And it's and I mean people. I don't mean Democrats or Republicans. I mean just people, right? And so you've got when you see actually real help coming down the way, guess what? I don't know. Mr. Potato Head doesn't fill your belly, doesn't pay your rent, right? I mean, doesn't get your kids back in schools. Right. I mean, and the fact is the best you got is put the racism back in Dr. Seuss and force gender a potato. I mean, that's what you're going on versus
have at
check money in your account. I mean, go for it. And matter of fact, I think all that nonsense actually really cleared the space for Democrats to dominate. Right. The messaging on this.
I mean, there was no. 2 months ago, I was home, listening to Sam Cedar on day one of the Biden White House or day two of the White House. And they were caught listening, talking about shots and checks, and there was just going to be a skinny bill. And, no, Democrats, Republicans fucked around to the point where it was pretty easy to run this ball in for a touchdown. The Republicans were screwing around so much. There wasn't really any blowback. There was, you talked about from CPAC, there was just no interest in them putting a deal together. Oh, and you had 10 Republicans try to put a deal together who weren't going to vote for the bill regardless. To in the end, this week was hopeful for a couple things. One, it shows Democrats can get shit done and just don't need Republicans to do it anymore. I think that should be the most important takeaway. The Democrats have the power to deliver material goods to people over the next couple of years in order to bolster or strengthen their majorities. And they can absolutely do that if they continue to do this type of stuff. Now, granted, the minimum wage was left out, and that's going to be a fight, we're going to have to keep on pushing for. But this might be one of the most progressive bills of our lifetime.
Oh, I mean, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Outside the ACA and the Family Medical Care and Leave Act.
Yeah, but here's the deal, though, right? The thing is here's even the distinction with the ACA. Look, I recognize that medical insurance got extended to a whole lot of people during the ACA, but as we know, we've talked about that extensively on this program. There are all sorts of problems with the ACA, including cost, including accessibility, and including still leaving a whole bunch of people out of that, right? One of the bigger problems of that, though, too, as well, was the kind of was the preservation of the corporate givebacks, right? It was the refusal to go with any kind of public option or whatsoever. If you look at the CARES Act, right, which was passed under Trump, right, this kind of, when the first round of checks that were putting out, a huge percentage of that money actually went to corporations, right, went to people at the top, right? It was all the kind of trickle down garbage. What we see in the American Recovery Act is a complete head over heels
handout
turn on this.
Handout to the working people.
Right. If you remember what happened at the Recovery Act of the Obama administration, right, we go way back then, right, into 2009. is like one of the biggest problems was, and you know, people have been talking about this for years. We don't need to go over this extensively, but what they chose to do is to kind of give money to the banks and to Wall Street as opposed to families kind of in crisis to pay their mortgages. So instead of bailing out the people with the mortgages like they did during the New Deal, what they did is they bailed out the banks at the top, and like thousands and thousands of people lost their homes. Right.
And that was the whole entire nexus of Occupy Wall Street. Like,
exactly.
I mean, it just like, and also like thinking about that, like we're rolling in on 10 years since Occupy Wall Street. Like, like 10 years since that all began. And what's that?
I said rolling.
Yeah. 10 years of the chicken and like fighting this stuff and, like complaining about this stuff for years now. But it's fun actually seeing a win once in a while. Like, and a major victory too. Like, and I mean, this only sets up the Democrats for a lot bigger of an infrastructure bill. I mean, you think about it right now, Democrats are at the point where we can just there's a couple of things that's happening. I don't know if it's the end of the Reagan era, but I think it's the beginning of the modern monetary theory era, the MMT era,
that's essentially the same thing, though. I mean, that would be essentially the same thing.
Yeah, like I think we're at the point of the beginning of the MMT era, where like we don't need to be worrying about inflation and fiat currency. Like we have a currency that the people in the world trust, and we can use that to print off money. And no, I mean, like you're already seeing it in the works with Manchin saying, yeah, we'll pay for the infrastructure bill by taxing the rich.
Let's see it, man.
And I mean, like the Democrats now have all the power. Like, are the Republicans going to put up no votes for a transportation bill that's polling even higher than like this?
Exactly.
Like, okay,
go for it.
I mean, you people are too fucking stupid to. Yeah, I mean, like, it's amazing that they did this like in such a spectacular way. Yeah. So, I mean, kudos to the Democrats for not breaking on this.
Right.
But also, like, like the Republicans didn't really make it hard for them either. I mean, they put up a short resistance towards the end of this process and calling out some of the pork. But I mean, by that point, like Biden asked and got for a $1.9 trillion deal, which is huge.
I mean, it's huge. And look, and I think that people are like, I think that, the pandemic has really, and then hearing the responses, right, that the Trump administration versus what we're seeing so far in the Biden administration, people are like, wait a minute here, like, what's going on? And there's, the whole idea of like, we can't tax the rich anymore doesn't really have a whole lot of traction. I mean, there was just like, this was circulating on Twitter a little bit, but, if people look at this and they say, okay, if we look at the billionaires, if we pass a wealth tax, right, that means like Jeff Bezos would owe $5.7 billion. Elon Musk would owe $4.6 billion, and Bill Gates would owe $3.6 billion, right? That would be their tax. And so it would leave them in poverty, Sean, right? That would mean it would leave them with...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Bezos would be left, after the tax, would be left with a mere $185 billion, Musk with $149 billion, and Gates with $116 billion. I mean, people see those kind of numbers and like, wait a minute, and you're telling me that, you can't fund like us going back to school, that you can't fix the roads, right?
I mean, I look at like, yeah. I mean, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's just it. I mean, I think that the traction, the fact that you actually seeing people like, okay, we're going to get our roads fixed, we're going to get public transportation, we're going to get an infrastructure bill, right? And these little freaking people who made hand over fist money during the pandemic are going to have to pay a little more. Yeah, I'm down with that.
I also do think it is the end of like the Reagan era, where like we saw what small government conservatism does. Like, we've been seeing what small government conservatism has been doing for the past 20 or 30 years. But like, it took a fucking pandemic for like it to really be exposed. Like, how much of a fraud, like, you're going to tell me you're a Republican mayor and this money's coming in, you're not going to plug your fucking budget gaps? I guarantee you that Republican county commissioners from Harrisburg are licking their chops over like, who they're going to distribute this COVID relief money out to. Like,
Well, and they should be, right? I mean, it's like the fact is that, there's like we were saying before the show, is like, look, I'm not gonna, like, you want a Republican, Democrat, whatever, you're licking your chops about getting that money that's coming in. That's awesome, right? Great, you should be, right? About where this money's gonna go out and how you're gonna spend it, whatever. And even if that helps them, right, go for it. It's gonna get to real people. It's gonna help real people. That's fantastic. If it goes to their buddies and things like this, then we're gonna have to throw them in jail. But if it goes to actually people,
in Dauphin County, I'll definitely go into their buddies.
Yeah, well then they should be put in jail. So and and we're gonna have like a 3 strikes and you're out policy with those folks. Like how about that? But it is. I mean, it's look. It's real stuff.
I think, and also like this only emboldens the progressive base.
Well,
saying this is what, like, this is only going to make us more emboldened. Like, this, see what you delivered on. You can do more, and we want more.
Well, let me. This is kind of a little bit of a response to some folks, kind of out there, who, well, no, I didn't want to go there. Let me put it this way: is like this is an opportunity right now to really acknowledge the work of that progressive base, and really that the work of the progressive base, and I mean like everyone from like the squad, right, to DSA, right, to people in PA, like PA Stands Up, right, to Make the Road folks, right, to even Indivisible, right, kind of you go like reach, we'll do a broad tent here, right, but to the progressive base, because here's the difference about this crisis. Right, is like, and this goes right back to kind of like, Milton Friedman, right? Milton Friedman, right? Like the godfather of the worst policies, economic policies in this country, right? The whole idea, what he recognized, he's like, in a crisis, right? What happens? The solutions are going to go to where the ideas lying around, right? So in other words, and the right wing invested in ideas and think tanks and policies, right? That they weren't popular at the time, but when a crisis hit, those ideas were ready to go. Right. This time around, the progressive base had the ideas. Right. Even if you look at what with the Sunrise Movement and AOC and things, they put together the Green New Deal. Right. The Green New Deal, in my mind, was a kind of a watershed moment, because what it did is it articulated a vision. Right. As did the Fight for 15. Right. But that was also in the Green New Deal. Right. As did Medicare for All, the Bernie Sanders campaign. Also made a significant contribution to like showing what a vision looks like. And when this crisis hit, the Republicans, what did they have? They had more of the same. Like, give money to the rich and it'll trickle down. And it's failed. 530,000 people dead because of this pandemic, because of those policies. Failing infrastructure, failing economy in the midst of all that. And now you've got progressives who have policies. You've got that's coupled with actually having people elected into office and using their power to push this stuff. I mean, this is the perfect example of the importance of the left, the importance of the progressives, right? And the left to kind of push the envelope and set out platforms and ideas that think big for the horizon. Because when something like this happens, like, we were the ones around. Right, and it's our platforms. I heard this great interview with some folks from the Sunrise Movement, who, when they had to meet with the Biden team, and they were talking about how to respond to climate change and a bunch of other things, and they were astounded. The fact they thought they were going to go in there and have to fight with the people in the Biden administration. They were like, instead, the Biden administration was like looking to the folks from Sunrise, right, being like, okay, what is it that we need to put in here? How do we do this? Yes, we're on board with that. They were able to take those ideas and move them forward because they knew they were popular, they responded to actually real needs, and they actually kind of gave back to the American people. And guess what? They're popular.
Like, we may not see a Green New Deal like in legislative name, but like the infrastructure bill that's going to be happening, you're going to see a lot of changes being made into that. Like the fact that we were like one of the biggest things, like why Republicans didn't want this bill to be passed, was because they wanted to strangle state and local budgets in order to force cuts to the public sector, in order to push attacks against teachers, which we've been seeing this whole entire pandemic from the right wing, especially when it comes to the debate about reopening schools. Further those attacks onto government workers, further those attacks on the teachers, office workers, and then like also further those attacks on the pensions in those states.
That's right.
If your state has a large deficit, because of a pension burden, or there's a thing like, what's the first thing Republicans go after? Public sector and the pensions. Well,
like apparently that was one of those big holdups, right? That was one of the things that, like, the Republicans were absolutely, especially behind the scenes, were flipping out about, right? That this would actually bolster up people's pensions and make sure that they had like a secure retirement. That was one thing that they did I'm not
going to mention anyone in particular, but it's amazing how there's a lot of like labor-friendly Republicans out there who voted against this bill. Because one of the most labor-friendly fucking bills ever. Like, talking about like not only like, you also have to look through like the American Rescue Plan through the labor lens, like securing pensions, funding public education, funding public works, public spaces, then also making sure people don't lose their pensions. One of the most important, and like not only that this is people make sure they don't lose their pensions, but they're actually getting pension money back.
Right.
Like, I mean, and the Republicans spent all this time talking about Potato Head and Dr. Seuss and airing out their grievances, like it was Festivus or something. Like, this gives no, I mean, like, this gives Democrats the opportunity to like move the goalpost even further, and it really just gives us like a huge messaging win, right? Like, this week you're seeing Biden going around the country. He's going to be in Delaware County this week. You're already seeing those trips getting layered with like, on the communications end with us, from like in the world, we're in, like, it's already going to like push that message even further. It's time to start delivering this message to those Republicans, because a whole lot of MAGA hat wearing Republicans, like Rick said, got their pension saved out of this.
Yep.
While like no Republican legislators voted for it. Like that, those are the messages that have to be like material goods that have to be delivered.
Well, and this is the thing, right? And this is where this is where I agree with what you were saying before about them. This is a complete miscalculation on their part, because now because not a single Republican voted for this stuff, right? What that means is that when Democrats are going to go in the midterms, they're going to be like, this is what Democrats delivered. Not a single Republican voted to make sure that you had your rent paid, to make sure that you had money in your pocket that was going to give you that enhanced
guaranteed your pension.
Guarantee your pension. That's and again, there you go. Here's the votes, right? All Democrats are the one who did this. Republicans, every single one of them said no, right? Even the ones that as you're kind of alluding to, even those ones that some Democrats and some folks like to embrace sometimes as friends of the working folks, they still voted no. So here we go. I mean, I don't think we could ask for a better move. So let me ask you this. So I mean, we've got that. We've got, as I kind of went through the stuff on the PRO Act, right? This is kind of like unbelievable in terms of what it's going to actually deliver in terms of labor protections, but that is going to bring a fight in the Senate. It passed the House, right? Even with some Republican support there. Or no, the PRO Act that was all party lines. Is that correct?
Or no, there were a handful of Republicans that did vote for PRO Act.
There were, yeah. It was a 225 to 206 vote. So there were some Republicans that voted for that. The gun legislation stuff that's going to now is going to go to the Senate, and now this is going to basically put the Democrats in a position to have to decide: okay, are you going to fight for this stuff? Because the only way that we're going to get the PRO Act, and the only way that you're going to get this kind of meaningful background checks for when it comes to the kind of sale of guns, is to eliminate the filibuster. Right? These are not.
And, like, this is the type of thing where.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, go ahead. Like, the PRO Act was pie in the sky, like, not really something that like was going to happen a few months ago, to now, like, like, this might actually get done. This might actually, like, you had Joe Manchin this week signaling that we might have to change the filibuster rules at some point. Like, like, I think that these people have to be felt and pressured nationally from organizations to do this, because we're not going to deliver if we don't change the filibuster.
That's right. I mean, I think that's exactly what it comes down to, is that, we have And look,
HR1 got passed last week or this week.
Well, that was the other thing I was about to say. We got voting rights, right? And look, if Democrats just in terms of purely kind of like politics, if Democrats have any hope of being able to kind of maintain a kind of majority going forward, they have to do voting rights reform. Because what we have right now is that now we're going on like how many years of minority rule, right? Just in terms of the number of people that are kind of like represented by Democrats versus the number of people that are represented by Republicans. It's like millions and millions of differences in terms of number of people that are represented because the small rural states are overrepresented in the Senate, right? So that's what it is. It's an anti-democratic institution. So the only way you get around that, right, is that one, you can actually, abolish the Senate. Those folks are calling for that. If you look at Ian Millhiser's kind of list, follow that. I love he wakes up every like third day or something like that. It's like, it's a good day to abolish the Senate. Right? But at the very least, you've got to be able to fight for, to pass things that are kind of important. What we saw right now is an example of what happens if the Democrats are willing to kind of fight and pass for things at a purely on majoritarian basis. Right? That's what the Recovery Act is all about. But the PRO Act and voting rights reform and kind of gun control legislation, those cannot be done through reconciliation. And under current rules, you have to get 60 votes, and there's no way in hell that the Republicans are going to give a single vote. We just saw that. So what that means is that you need to basically deal with a simple majority. That means getting rid of the filibuster. Right? Or at the very least, right? Even Manchin's starting to buckle on this a little bit. He was on talk shows last summer. Well, we can make the filibuster harder. I'm not going to get rid of the filibuster, but you can make the little assholes sit there and stand there and have to argue for their points nonstop. And if they sit down or they pass it off, then basically they lose, and that's it. Then they can vote. Right? The standing filibuster. Mr. Smith goes to Washington and kind of nonsense. That stuff. Right? At the very least, you could do that to make it hard. And that's a kind of a nice step forward on that. I'd like to see that. So we'll see. Now, I can't say that, who knows? I'm a little reluctant or I'm a little hesitant to kind of suggest that this is a conscious strategy on the part of the House Democrats or the Democratic Party as a whole. But I like this idea that super popular legislation is getting passed in the House and it's starting to log jam up in the Senate, right? And the thing that is causing those logs to jam is the filibuster. So it's a way of putting significant amount of pressure upon an arcane Senate rule that not a single American gives half a crap about. Okay, I'm sorry, 20 Americans care about. Whatever, So that's significant, right? So more pressure gets put on that thing and say, why are we allowing these states to now pass kind of like anti-voting rights legislation? Why is Georgia passing legislation that's going to take away kind of like souls to the polls Sunday voting, right, in Georgia? Why are we allowing kind of more black people to be disenfranchised? Well, it's because the Republicans and the filibuster, right? Get rid of the filibuster, we solve the problem, right? So I'm hoping that's where there's going to be a really strong push, and it looks like it's happening. And it looks like that Democrats may be getting ready to fight on this one. And I'm looking forward. And frankly, the fight isn't even a fight, right? What it is that it's like what they're nervous about more than anything else is how it's going to play in the media, right? That's what they're afraid of. This is an old fear that the Democrats have because Americans, if you want to talk about the majority of Americans, they don't give a crap about that.
Like, you don't care? Like, so you're going to tell me when you get that $1,400 check? Well, I don't know if you'll get one because you might need to test it out. But in theory, like, you don't care. You're going to be upset when you get that check and no Republicans voted for the bill.
Right. That's right. I had a tweet out this week that was like that. Basically, like, I got a $1,400 check. I can't pay my rent. My family doesn't have medical insurance, and I'm sure I'm going to pay the bill, but I'm not going to accept it if it's not bipartisan. Right? It's like said no one ever. Right? I mean, it's like. This is this is it. And I think that, look, if Democrats can trust people enough, right, trust working people enough that actually this matters to them, like real concrete material gains matter to them.
No, I feel like this bill, and then like the passage of the infrastructure bill, one are actual things that can actually expand your majorities in 2022.
Yeah,
and like. Also, I mean, like, we haven't really talked about this, but it might actually like turn down the temperature a bit of the right-wing fanaticism we've been seeing over the past years. You know, you give people the economic, you know, like how much of this, again, we can debate like economic means versus like racial stuff, but like, you know, you give these people money, you give them jobs, like you give like, there's infrastructure jobs going on that brings money into the community. It's going to turn down the temperature overall. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's things like this, like we need to be doing to, you know, make sure like we're not fighting each other over fucking pieces of the pie.
Right. And this is like, you know, like you said, I mean, I like the way you put it, like the beginning of the MMT era. Because we could say, like, guess what? We can make a bigger pie, right? I mean, we can, and matter of fact, we can have bread too, right? And other desserts, right? I mean, we can have sustenance and dessert. How about that? Like bread, roses, and pie. How's that? We'll do it right across the board. It's pretty amazing. But so we'll see. Yep, we'll see kind of where this goes. It's pretty cool. I pay attention. I want everybody to pay attention to what's going on at John Carroll University. There's like you're watching like single-handedly kind of altering the rules around tenure, faculty getting fired left and right. They are not alone. We profiled some of the stuff that was going on in Iowa. Attempts to do this at public institutions. John Carroll University is a private, I believe, I want to say Mennonite university. They're doing that. They're doing that there. And it's what's coming. So that's going to be a fight in higher education. Oklahoma legislation about kind of, you know, you have the right to run over protesters. That we'll see. This is not the first time we've seen this legislation. But you also see that, you know, again, you corner a wounded dog, and this is what they do, right? As they lash out. Right. And this is what's going to continue to happen. So we're also seeing the attempts to kind of eliminate kind of all abortion. Right. Was it Arkansas? No. I thought I had that in the notes. It's not there. But attempt to eliminate kind of all abortion, like as a way of kind of forcing the revisiting of Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court. That's also happened this week. All that stuff is kind of making its way through. So, you know, we got to keep our eyes on the prize. At the same time, recognize these huge advancements. If you want any proof that this is having an effect, the fact that Marco Rubio came out this week and said that he's supporting Amazon workers because one of his first memories is standing on a picket line with his dad. Is like, you know, I think literally there's a few people out there who literally broke their necks, right? Kind of like saying, "What'd you say?" Right? They couldn't believe what the hell was going on.
Yeah, that sounds like a bullshit story.
Oh yeah, well, no, but it might be, right? Even if it is, well, who cares if it's real or not? The fact is that he felt that he had to say it. Right, with that like if the winds were blowing the way they were like just a few months ago, he would have made that statement. It would have been just the opposite of that, right? And I got to say, I'm very excited to see that Andrew Cuomo is facing the wrath of virtually everybody right now, right? You probably heard if you listen to this show, kind of back when he came out and was the kind of, you know, the darling of the national media when it came to the COVID stuff. I was livid about it in part because he's a scumbag. Right. If like, you know, I grew up in New York State, right. My parents, like, I know people who are Democrats, things like that, hate him. Right. Because of what he's done to the public schools.
If you listen
no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, if you listen to NPR, On the Media had a really good interview or podcast with Alex Perrine last week talking about the made TV hype around Cuomo and stuff like that. Definitely worth checking out.
Definitely. Alex Perrine's fantastic, right? He's really awesome. He's a writer. He's a staff writer for the New Republic too. He's awesome. And but yeah, so that's on Cuomo. It's great to see that guy going down. And then right before, I think it was yesterday, a sixth woman came forward, basically, and kind of saying that she had been, who had worked closely with him, had said that she had been groped by the governor in his office, right, or in the building. So it's only a matter of time at this point. But he's a stubborn son of a bitch, and he will stay in there and hold on to power to the last grasp of it. That's what he's been all about since he's been in office, the governor. People who are involved in politics in New York State will tell you this. People have feared him for what they would do to their careers, and to see him go down is such sweet justice right now. I have to say, I'm thrilled. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into some kind of, and some equally amazing things happening here in Pennsylvania. I mean, just also kind of like the what do you call it? The waves of effect of the American Recovery Act and a bunch of other stuff. So we'll get into that. Want to kind of give one more plug to what's happening next week on Out to Coop Live. On Out to Coop Live on Monday, I'm talking to Peter Campbell, president of ABSCUF chapter at Lock Haven University. Sean O'Dell is the president of the Lock Haven chapter of AFSCME, and the past president of ABSCUF Lock Haven, Matt Geerton. We're going to be talking about the Chancellor Greenstein's attempts to desires to consolidate Lock Haven, Bloomsburg, and Mansfield University. And then on Wednesday, I'll be talking to Christina Marusik from the Environmental Health News about her devastating 4-part story, Fractured. It's just an absolutely kind of critical one. Those coming up on Out to Coop Live next week. I want to remind you that you can help support this show by going to kind of patreon.com/rcpress and becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. We're going to be right back after this quick break with a focus on what's going on right here in PA. Right back. Sorry about that. Welcome back to Raising Chickens Out the Coop podcast. It'd be great to kind of, turn my mic back on, right? So right here, we're going to focus on what's going on here in PA. And Sean, man, take it away, man. You've got some of the numbers here about what some of the impact the American Recovery Act is going to be, what's happening here in the Commonwealth. Let me dish it off to you.
Yeah, so the Budget and Policy Center has some really good, has a really good explainer on everything. That's really going to talk about this. So 5.9 million Pennsylvanians are going to receive $14.8 billion in direct payments. Hundreds of thousands are going to see their healthcare premiums decrease through Penny. And then a quarter of the state's uninsured is going to be eligible for free bronze or like low cost silver packages. That's just some of the stuff we're seeing. Pretty much like I'm expecting my healthcare premiums to go down a bit, thank God. But even if it's like an extra $100 a month, which is still like more money, like what I mean?
Yep.
Like the savings we're all going to be having. So.
Well, and here's some of the other numbers, right, too, as well. Like this report, so it says 892,000 children under 17 who were left out of the full $2,000 child tax credit would now benefit. 140,000 children under the age of 18 would be lifted out of poverty. 311 children under 18 would be lifted above or close to the poverty line, and 90% of children under 18 would be benefit from the expansion. So you're talking even like the direct care here. You're talking about new funding for Head Start, right, in the amount of about $34.45 million, right, which is absolutely freaking huge. You're seeing like, food assistance. You're seeing kind of a housing help. You're seeing support for small businesses. Like, as you kind of mentioned, there's a state and local governments to be able to do this. Education funding, right, going to bolster up the education. I mean, it's like, it's remarkable what's going to be happening here in the state.
Yeah. Harrisburg has a $2.7 billion deficit. The state of Pennsylvania does. I mean, we're getting or $2.5 billion budget deficit from this past year. Pennsylvania's getting $7.2 billion in return. Harrisburg has a $25 million or like a $20 million deficit. We're going to get $50 million out here just for the city government. Like, it is going to. I mean, I feel like, especially here on Harrisburg, I know we were talking about this earlier. Like, Harrisburg right now is primed for just an explosion at this point. Like, it's pretty much like whenever an apartment fills up or a house opens up, like they get filled, they get sold, they get taken off the block right away. There's a new courthouse going up, federal courthouse. There's going to be a new archives building going in right across the street from that. There's plans on putting in new apartment complexes with underground parking to serve the needs of those working in those new buildings that are going up, but also like, we're seeing this at a time when Second Street's about to go two ways. There's going to be roundabouts be putting in some of the major arteries in the city. A lot of traffic flow, infrastructure upgrades are happening, and it's just like, people like don't realize the effect that type of stuff will have until, is it part of gentrification? Possibly, but like, property values are going to be going up in the area. Like, outside of this, like a lot of this development's happening because swaths of Harrisburg were listed as Keystone Opportunity Zones or economic development zones, like under the Trump administration. So like, developers are going to make out like a bandit because of that. But like, it's bringing in more income tax, more of a tax base into the city. We're going to be expanding our population soon. And it's going to be interesting to see where the city goes from here.
Well, and like right now, I mean, you think about the difference of the fight, right? The difference of the fight now is like, yes, because you mentioned, because yes, there's been, again, we're seeing kind of gentrification over that. But when you plug those holes, right now, the question is like, what policies you want to do, what actually, how do we want to kind of protect communities, right? Then it's no longer about like, well, we have to do this because we have to bring in business. Now it becomes like, what's the vision of the city that we want? And it gives like, again, progressives and people want to have kind of a much more kind of, kind of sustainable city that is not just about, displacing kind of the residents, primarily black and brown residents from the city, but actually they're going to build up the city as it is. Now that can be a place to push about how that money gets used, as opposed to being able to kind of have to worry about kind of, nothing we can do because we have no money.
Yeah. I mean, like also like SEPTA won't be going bankrupt because of this.
Yeah.
In a state, like you're going to have major infrastructure. So $650 million is going to go towards SEPTA upgrades, $115 million towards the Philadelphia International Airport. Like restaurants are going to get money. Like I'm looking at numbers in the Southeast and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I mean, like this is going to be really good for cities in the area. I mean, like, I hope there's more.
Yeah, I hope
with this. Like,
I mean, it's incredible to see what's going on. And like, I look right now, there's a big push right now to even get like my kids back in school. And look, our school district is like, is not kind of like, starved for funds, right? But I know they've been put under a kind of extreme, stress just to be able to kind of hit all the kind of mitigation and making sure that you had kind of adequate materials, make sure that you had adequate ventilation, make sure that you were able to kind of have masks for everybody, have PPE for everybody and all that kind of stuff. And so that just multiplied like hundreds of times over in kind of districts that are already strapped for funds, to see that these education funds are going to come in here that are going to help kind of bolster up and ensure that if kids are going to go back to school, that it's not going to be putting, say, teachers and staff and the community and the students unnecessarily at risk. I mean, that's also kind of what we see as a result of this.
Yeah. I was also going to say something earlier, like it's also shows importance of having, Democrats like Brendan Boyle, Madeline Dean, or like Dwight Evans, who sit on these powerful committees, like, Ways and Means or Judiciary. We're seeing this like now, like, with Madeline Dean and being an impeachment manager, but like, having like having good Democrats like that can actually get stuff done from the southeast part of the state, versus like having it there was only like one Democrat in all of southeastern Pennsylvania because of the gerrymandering. But like, having a Dwight Evans and like a Brendan Boyle sit on these committees, it's bringing money home to the state. It's bringing money home to a city that actually needs it. Bringing money home to a region that really needs it, and also kudos to like everyone getting this done. And now like the goal is to make sure the Republicans in Harrisburg don't fuck around and mismanage this money and give it to their friends in charter schools and stuff like that.
Right. And the remarkable thing is that we're at a point in this state where there's actually, an infrastructure, an organized infrastructure on the ground of people who are, it's capable of holding them accountable. I mean, again, I hate to kind of, I don't hate to do it, but I mean, every week I find myself, praising PA Stands Up, praising Make the Road, praising the folks like DSA who have actually been doing the organizing work on the ground in these areas that will show up to put pressure upon, say, these legislators, right, in their communities. I mean, that is the ticket right there. I mean, this is the, the 1-2 punch. You got the money coming home, and now we get to hold these folks accountable, right? Because it's not going to happen on their own. And like anybody who lives in the state knows full well that corruption is deep, right? And that that they will do things, they will try to mess stuff up. And I'm talking about Democrats, Republicans alike. So all the more reason to kind of continue to kind of, put these people on notice that we're watching, and that we're going to make sure that the money gets in the hands of people who need it. Right, we're going to bolster our schools. We're going to make sure that small businesses are kind of okay. We're going to make sure that our communities are kind of healthy. That we're reinvesting in kind of a future of Pennsylvania that is, not about, I don't know, giving a cush job to your wife, for example. Just saying.
Yeah.
Very cool. So amazing stuff. So, anything else that you got going on in Pennsylvania that you've kind of flagged for the week?
Not a whole lot going on. There's always stuff going on, but
not a whole lot for you going on. That's all right.
Yeah. It's just like it's.
It's like,
there are.
See, like when I'm paying attention to stuff, think about it as like kind of like that guy who opens a crack of the door and kind of peers through to see what's going on out there. Like that's my focus.
I'm still waiting for like the Capitol to reopen at this point, but that's not happening anytime soon. It looks, but just waiting for shit to like start opening up again.
Yeah. Well, in my neck of the woods, it's been really interesting. A bunch of folks in my town even have gotten pissed off because they've been getting these phone calls, and it shows up on the caller ID as being from Johnson & Johnson. Now, of course, if you're like me or like thousands of other people, you're trying to sign up, you're trying to get your vaccine. Right. And you're told that you're on a waiting list and you're waiting to get these calls. Right. So what was happening is that people are getting this call. It looks like it's from Johnson & Johnson. They're getting all excited. Like, oh, my God, maybe I'm going to get the vaccine now. Turns out they put up hello. Right. And who is it? But it's the Bucks County Republican Party, basically trying to kind of get people to show up to signature signing events so that they can get their candidates on the ballot. Right.
Okay. So do you think this was intentional?
Totally was intentional. It was totally intentional. I mean, you look the chair of the Bucks County Republican Committee. Her name is Pat Poprick, I'm sorry, and she apologized for the confusion, saying it was an unintended technological error. Right, that's what her claim was. Right, and she said, "Well, look, we had a third-party vendor that was hired to make the calls, and that one of their phone numbers was previously listed as the pharmaceutical company in some areas, and it was all a mistake." And you freaking kidding me? So you actually expect that to fly in terms of what's going on? Now, again, like, is this the biggest news of the week? Is it the most kind of important thing that's going on? Obviously not, right? But it just shows you that you're going to resort to trickery around the coronavirus to try to get your signatures instead of doing the freaking work of actually showing up and kind of setting up events where people are going to come out. No. You're going to try to trick people. And, and what I don't think they expected is I don't think they expected people to get pissed off, right? I think they just expected people to, and like, look, was it a decision of the third-party vendor, right, to do that as a way of doing it? Maybe, right? But I'm sorry, you don't get, as the Bucks County Republican Party, you don't get to wash your hands of it and say, oops, there they go again. No, you take responsibility. So that was just kind of like, unbelievable. In the meantime, I actually was thrilled. Let me kind of pull this up real quick. I wish I had it marked right there. I should have had it early on the show, but I don't. So the Bucks County Courier Times, right? Oh God, here we go. Bucks County Courier Times is kind of like, county paper, right? And you got the kind of Intelligencer was one that's published out of Doylestown, but the Bucks County Courier Times is actually kind of a fairly decent paper for these kind of small, kind of free. You can do a subscription one, but you can pick it up free too as well. They've actually got some good stories in there. They've done some good work over the years. Well, they just hired. I'm gonna butcher his last name, and Cyril, I'm sorry for this. His last name, I'm gonna try to get it, is Mikolejko, like Cyril Mikolejko, right? I've kind of come across, cross past him a few times in organizing work kind of in the past, especially around what was happening after the midterm elections of the Tea Party in 2010, 2011. But he just got hired as an explicitly progressive voice to write a column for the Courier Times, right? To kind of be a balance to this. And in his first article, which was just published yesterday, he basically lays it out. It's like, look, Bucks County is turning, right? You've got progressive movements that are happening here in Bucks County, that you've got a kind of a slow kind of like organizing base that's moving over. So it is no longer a red county. It is a purple county. Right. And now that you've got actually a strong progressive voice, which is the Courier Times, which also gives you a sense of what that newspaper is kind of responding to. Right. So that he's coming on board, too. So this is really, really kind of an important move. It's a small move. I get it. But I definitely encourage you to go and kind of check him out. I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes, but I'm going to try to get him on the show, too, as well, to kind of talk about his column and what he's planning to do, because it's a huge deal. And that paper is the one that kind of broke that story, right? That and the Intelligencer kind of say, here it is. This is what the Republican Party is doing in Bucks County. They're going to try to trick you, get them to sign their petitions, right? So kudos to them, and kudos to Cyril for getting that gig too as well. I also thought I was thrilled to hear that the York-based convenience store Rudders, right, basically said, during the pandemic, they gave people that were coming into work, they gave them $2 an hour extra in hazard pay. Right. And now they're saying, you know what, pandemic is out. They're getting ready to open up. They're gonna just basically put that as part of the base pay. Right. So basically everyone's is going to hold on to that $2 an hour raise. Right. So the starting wage there at Rudders is going to be $12.50 an hour. And after a 3-month kind of whatever trial period, whatever you want to call it, that'll go up to $13 an hour after 3 months. They said that this is kind of basic about their core values or whatever. I mean, whatever comes out of, companies going to say what companies do, but that's I think a kind of a significant move. And it shows you that the pressure for increasing the wages is kind of more important, or is there already. The fact that you've got businesses that are already doing it because they're trying to hold on to these employees. And if they're half decent people, right? Owners of the companies, they're gonna say man, our employees kind of kept us going throughout the kind of a really, really tough time, and we're not gonna sell them short. We're gonna keep on supporting them. So that's awesome. Last thing I want to say about the PA stuff is that yesterday there was a Zoom town hall at Kutztown University with the Chancellor Greenstein. I was there for a good chunk of it. I was listening on my phone. I had to pick up my daughter during the midst of it, all this stuff, but I guess the way I described it online was, it was like, on the one hand, it was a cross between this kind of like a venture capitalist pitch session from Silicon Valley, right? That was the chancellor, and then you had kind of like resentful defensiveness on the part of President Hawkinson of Kutztown University when he was called on stuff, and it was I mean, I didn't say a word during this thing because I knew I would have not been able to kind of contain myself because I was so livid about what was actually going on and what was being said. There was a student there by the name of Emma, who was the only one to actually seriously put pressure upon the chancellor and Hawkinson about the kind of lack of access to kind of psychological services at the university. They kind of just basically discovered the fact that there was a police officer on the university police force that was posting racist images to his social media, racist kind of memes, kind of like pro insurrection, all that kind of garbage, right? Confederate flags all over the place. And saying Kutztown is supposed to be committed to diversity and all this kind of stuff. We want to committed with no tolerance for hate, and yet you've got someone on the police force who is actually spouting everything kind of against those values, right? Kutztown claims to be a caring community, and yet students cannot get access to adequate health care, that they're being mistreated by police and so on the campus. And so they're bringing these things forward. And finally, the chancellor's like, I just like, if I could solve one problem, it's like we're too hierarchical. Meanwhile, he's making all the decisions and forcing all the decisions on everybody else. But he says, we're too hierarchical. We have to unleash the power that gives us things from below. We have to unleash the power of our faculty, of our staff, of our students. We have to unleash it by disruptive this thing. We have to do it by kind of what they do in the tech industry is kind of, they use this thing called fail fast. You kind of experiment and see what happens to unleash creativity, right? Now, that works fine if you're talking about rockets and SpaceX destroying the rockets to get data, right, in order to kind of figure out how to do it next. It's totally different when you're talking about people's freaking lives, right? That the fact that when we had this one student who came on and she told a really difficult story about what had happened to her and her experience when trying to get psychological services at the university, and the way that she was treated by the police officers who came to kind of deal with her. And their response was, we're going to have to kind of like think outside the box. We're going to have to think about we're going to have to innovate our way out of this. We're going to have to kind of, maybe look at, telehealth, and maybe look at other ways of doing this. And Hawkinson comes on and is like, yes, we're going to have to explore additional things like telehealth and, and web-based services and so on. I'm like, really? You're basically going to tell students who are in crisis, right? And we have a recognized kind of lack of access to psychological services at the university. And you're going to basically saying, hey, you know what? We're going to contract out and we're saying there's an app for that. And that's how you're going to handle that. Right. And the president was so defensive that he actually said to that student, yeah, well, you know what? He's like, Kutztown, after he tries to be calm and nice and caring, like, oh, that's a really tough story. That took a lot of courage. But Kutztown University is at or above like our access to staff than the other Pashi schools. So, right, basically says, I hear your pain, but you suck and you're wrong. Right? I couldn't believe it. And so you got this one guy, the chancellor of the state system, basically go read Anand Giridharadas' book, right? Winners Take All, right? That's effectively kind of what he's saying there, right? And it was just absolutely crazy. Hey, listen, I got to take this call, so we're going to go to a break, and we're going to come back right after this message. I'm sorry to cut it short real quick, but I got someone coming in here. I got to take this call. We'll be back right after this quick break. Hello? Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, welcome back. Sorry for the sudden quick break there at the last minute. But I have some kind of folks that were coming in. They kind of needed to measure some stuff, and so I just had to go and kind of handle that. So that was a quick end to the previous segment. My apologies. But listen, we have for today's last call. We'll keep it kind of short since I got stuff going on here. Just a couple things that are just kind of real cool off the top of the bat when you're talking about what's going on kind of in NASA. Big week in space news once again. I could go on and on and on about this, but I won't. The NASA basically named the landing site for the Perseverance rover the Octavia Butler landing, and she is a celebrated African American science fiction writer. Her novels include Kindred, Parable of the Sower. She's got a fantastic series. I love her books. I've read the stuff as a science fiction geek that I am. She's just a brilliant writer and really charted out a kind of huge, trajectory and body of work. And she died in February 24th, 2006. And so they named the landing spot after her, which is pretty amazing. Also, I'll mention up the top of the board, NASA is basically partnering with the Navajo Nation as working with NASA's Perseverance rover team to name some of the features on Mars using the kind of the Navajo language. Seems like a really fascinating kind of partnership they got going on there. I'll leave some more extensive stuff in the show notes for today. But basically, they're using Navajo words for things like, say, red rock and diligence and amongst the sand, and the Navajo word for Mars to indicate different landmarks there. And that comes in part because one of the mission scientists on the team, his name is Aaron Yazzie. He is Navajo, and he's kind of worked basically. He's one of the guys. He's an engineer who worked in designing and building the drills that are up there now on the rover to do some of the biological and kind of rock sampling that Perseverance is going to be doing. And the other one, this is going to be a fascinating one to follow to see what goes on, is that there's just the announcement this week that, say, China and Russia have kind of decided to sign on and kind of work together to build a moon base. But yes, we are slowly moving out of the realm of science fiction, and this stuff is becoming a little too real. So they're planning on doing this. There was not a date listed for it, but it looks like there's going to be an increasing partnership there. They like I mentioned at the top of the show that we had the Artemis Accords. Basically were laid out some preliminary rules for kind of how to actually use the land, how to actually use what can and cannot be done on the moon and things like this. There were a bunch of countries who kind of were like, wait a minute, we already have these documents, we already have these treaties. But the NASA decided to kind of go it alone, as it were, and kind of Russia basically broke ranks with that, say, listen, that's too U.S. centric, and so now they seem to be partnering more with China. It's gonna be fascinating what happens into the space race and kind of the days coming forward. And then, like I also mentioned at the top of the show, he was like, my friend Stu, right? He's out there in Northern Ireland, out there in Derry. His wife is from Galicia in Spain, right, which is kind of the northwest corner of Spain. It's like everything you do not imagine Spain to be, right? It's kind of like, it's wet, it rains a lot, it looks like, like the Pacific Northwest, right? It's absolutely gorgeous. My wife and I went to their wedding kind of years ago. It was an unbelievable area of the country. But anyways, there's this kind of emerging genre of TV shows, right, that are this called Galician noir. And one of the first ever shows, and I wish I had the name of it right here. I'll get that to you at some point. But was the first one that was ever done in the Galician language, right? Because there's a strong kind of, say, regional kind of identity there, which they're maintaining. And so you got this Galician noir coming up. You've heard me talk about some of the Norwegian or the kind of Scandinavian noir stuff that I kind of got roped in on Netflix for a while, which I absolutely kind of love that stuff. Nice and dark, moody, right? Whatever. Same thing you got to hear with Galician noir. So I'm going to be checking some of that stuff out this weekend. I'll give you a little update on what's going on with free will. Let me just kind of pull it up real quick. I thought I had it up here. This is one of my... So I know that last week, they had a good release, which we didn't mention, right? In part because they didn't announce it until until later on after our podcast. Oh yeah, they've got that this week. They're coming back out with mango wheat. It's a mango wheat. It's an American wheat ale brewed with mangoes. Simply say classic, dating back to bottling days of the past era. good, nice beer, summer drinking beer. Comes in at 5% ABV. You could pick that up all over the place. The one that I'm more interested in kind of telling you about, though, is actually something that came out last week, was available last week, and that's their latest mash. And this one is called the Meyer Lemon Mash. Right. This is a sour ale brewed with Meyer lemon puree, vanilla, and milk sugar, fully fermented, and as always, while retaining a dense and fluffy body we come to love. This, I'm just reading directly from their site. This one pops with a bright, refreshing citrus character, followed by an almost a dessert-like decadence of lightly toasted dollops of whipped cream, shortbread crust, and a coarse, rich lemon curd in between. A fitting one for the winter to spring transition. I agree, and that comes in at 7.5 ABV. I have not tasted it yet, otherwise I'd give you the review of it right now, but I will be picking some of that stuff up, so I'll let you know next week about it. So that one sounds exactly on point for here. I had my first 2 barbecues this week, right? I got cooked out 2 nights in a row. I'm all ready for the summer, ready to go, get the hell outside. And here we go. But Sean, you got anything going on this weekend?
Not a whole lot. Just hanging around, cooking. I start running again this week. We'll see how long that lasts.
Oh yeah, I saw you posting that on Twitter. I said, and just let you know, I don't know if it's the 2nd and 3rd day. I think it's the 7th and 8th day. That's when it really kicks in. That's when you hit a wall.
For me, it's like, so I've been keeping up doing the walks and stuff like that. So my legs technically aren't hurting as much, but it's like getting that leg endurance back up, and it's like the pain you have after the first couple runs are just like, fuck.
Yeah.
It's just like,
I hear you.
I mean, I'm just doing stuff like short intervals, 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off type things, but I at least want to try to do something and stay active, especially with all the hiking I'll be doing this summer. So start running this week. I figured it's better to start now with nice weather in March than
before it gets hot.
To jump right in. Yeah. Before it gets before it's 70 degrees in a steam bath.
Yeah, right.
Early in the morning up here. So start doing that. We'll see how long it lasts. But nothing too much going on. Just looking forward to this weather changing.
Yeah, are you going to be constantly refreshing your bank account now this weekend too as well?
What do you mean by that?
I'm talking about, $1,400, man.
I'll be putting that money towards I get a paper check.
Oh, you're gonna get a paper? Okay.
I have to wait.
Oh, you have to wait. Okay.
That money's going towards paying down my credit card. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that stuff done.
There you go. Well, hey, listen,
and then I have a bunch of Go
ahead, sorry.
A bunch of items I want to knock off my list.
Yeah, there you go.
Getting a grill and some deck furniture.
Oh yeah, so we got to set aside some time next week then to talk about your full deck plans, right? Because I want to hear that. I want to hear the whole spell it out right from kind of beginning to end around this.
Well, it's do I want to get do I want to spend the money on that stuff first, or still get some outgoing camera equipment that I need?
Yeah.
So a tripod and a filter. So.
Crazy. All right, man. Well, I'm going to run. I've got, trying to do as usual about 7 things at once. And so here we go. We'll see. Next week, like I said, we got some good shows coming up. I'm going to be talking to some folks from up at Lockhaven on Monday night, and then on Wednesday, we're going to kind of get right back into some of the reporting from the Environmental Health News with Christina Marusik, which should be an awesome discussion. You definitely got to read her stuff. Anyways, man, good talking to you, good seeing you. I wish you a great weekend, and here's to the onset of spring.
Yep.
He says, yep. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later, Sean. Have a good one, all. I'm going to get out of here quick, and we'll see you on Monday for Out the Coop Live. See you on Wednesday. See ya!